Hi, I'm Harold De Loach, Director of Education for the Academy of Industrial Arts, and this is EC&M Asks, a Q&A session where we answer questions from our readers in the members only section. So the easiest way for an electrician or apprentice to begin navigating the National Electrical Code is to go right to the beginning of the code book in Article 90, Figure 90.3, which is part of the introduction to the National Electrical Code. There you will find 9 blocks that lay out the entire code book. When I'm instructing electricians how to begin breaking down the National Electrical Code, I like to attach keywords or operative words with the chapter layout in Figure 90.3. Right at the top, Chapter 1 is general. That's the general portion of the code book. It contains Article 100, which is filled full of definitions, technical terms that electricians need to learn if they're going to begin interpreting the language inside of the code book. Also in Chapter 1 General is Article 110, requirements for electrical installations. If you're going to be taking an electrical exam to get licensed or a journeyman examination, Chapter 1 General has Article 110 requirements for electrical installations, which give you clearances and working spaces about electrical equipment, switchgear, panels, clearances that you need in front and above. So one of the first notes you should take with understanding the purpose of Chapter 1 General is write a little note in that block in your code book in ink, not pencil, write working space. Whenever you're looking for information about clearances around or about electrical equipment, just remember that's the purpose of Chapter 1. Chapter 2, there's a great note to remember what wiring and protection is for in the code book. That is the chapter that electricians go to for the planning stage of an electrical construction projects. That is where you find your requirements for branch circuits, feeders, service calculations. Those are the guidelines that we need to start designing before we even start building a project. There are great articles in there that assist electricians, like Article 210, branch circuits, feeders, service calculations. These are all of the things that you need at the beginning stages of an electrical project. Now, the next important chapter is Chapter 3, wiring methods. This is the chapter that electricians go to for the building stage of a project. If you can bend it, pull it, energize it, it's in Chapter 3. That's where you find the necessary articles to find out where and how you can use non-metallic sheath cable, AC cable, EMT, electrical metallic tubing. This chapter covers all of your basic essential questions when you're on the job site about means of support. How often are you supposed to support mineral clad cable? Your intervals of support, how far apart, when they're required. Then there's Chapter 4, equipment for general use. This is the chapter that is filled with articles that covers exactly what it describes. Equipment for general use, stuff you see every day, transformers, generators, switches, receptacles, luminaires, which is a fancy word for light fixtures. This is where you go to find guidelines for panel boards, switchboards. I like to take a note right by the Chapter 4 block at Figure 90.3. I like to write a little note under there, stuff you see every day. That's why they call it equipment for general use, because it's stuff you see every day. Chapter 5, special occupancies. I like to classify special occupancies as non-residential. anything that you're looking for in the code book that requires guidelines for non-residential buildings or structures, it's in special occupancies. That's where you find the guidelines for your churches, your schools, your ballrooms, your bowling alleys. That is where the non-residential guidelines can be found. Then there's Chapter 6, Special Equipment. Here's the note that I like to put to remember the purpose of Chapter 6, stuff you don't see every day. One of the interesting articles that you can find in Special Equipment are the guidelines for installing pipe organs. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know many electricians that work on pipe organs, right? So that's why they classify special equipment. Other articles that you can find in this unique chapter is elevators, right? Floating sidewalks, moving platforms, special equipment. So I like to label that particular chapter stuff you don't see every day. These are very unique installation guidelines. That's why they label it special equipment. Chapter 7, Special Conditions. This is a very, very unique chapter in the NEC. Now, for 2 years, I was the Assistant Director of Education for an apprenticeship training center. And there was this one particular module that I went through where we had to cover Chapter 7, Special Conditions. Special Conditions covers complicated electrical requirements for main electrical services for critical care facilities, like hospitals. I didn't know this, but hospitals have to be fed redundantly from the utility company. That means they're fed twice. There is a backup circuit in the event that the primary power circuit fails. It can automatically switch over to a backup circuit coming from the utility company. So those are very, very special conditions. So the contractors and engineers that are working on critical care facilities, they have special power requirements. You can find that in special conditions. Chapter 8, Communication Systems. That is where you find the requirements for your coaxial cable, RG6. These are where the guidelines where you find the requirements for radio broadcast stations, movie theaters, all of the types of communications and facilities. You find that in Chapter 8. Chapter 9, Tables. That's where you find information for your conductor properties. If you're doing a calculation for a voltage drop and you need to know how much resistance it is in a particular conductor, if you need to find out what the square inch area is of a conductor with and without insulation, you can find that in Chapter 9. So I like to label Chapter 9 Conductor Properties. And basically that summarizes most of the National Electrical Code. Now, at the end, you'll find informative annexes, A through J. There are 2 annexes that I think are very interesting for electricians that are learning how to use the National Electrical Code. So informative Annex D, you can find examples of service calculations. So when I'm running an electrical license prep course, I send electricians to informative Annex D1A, and it displays an example of sizing an electrical service for a dwelling unit. That is a very basic calculation. Informative Annex D gives you examples of calculations. Another one is informative Annex H, administration of the code book. If you're ever interested in finding out how municipalities or city agencies set up electrical units or divisions, Annex H gives instructions on how to set up an electrical unit, how to issue permits, how to conduct electrical inspections, how to enforce the code book. That summarizes the entire code book. I hope you guys enjoyed the quick synopsis of breaking down the code book. So thank you guys for tuning in. I'll be back for another video to answer your question on EC&M Asks.